Professor David Galbreath from Bath University. Good to talk to you. We're in the afterglow of the Defence Review. Britain's armed forces, Britain's Ministry of Defence are looking anew at how they conduct military operations and protect our national security. You work in academia. How can Britain's universities contribute to the national defence mission?
I think British universities really can look at it, can operate in two different ways. One is that I think there's a very strong research and development, so science and technology base at universities, and most definitely where that technology or where that science is essentially coming from, in many cases, is still universities. I think what's really changing is that the industry itself, in terms of the digital space, is really coming from the United States, and really understanding how all of that comes together is going to be really key for universities and how they, in a sense, plug into defense and how they're able to continue to support defense. The other way I think that universities can really help, and that is in terms of the people side. One is that defense education, of course, is an important piece. I would like to see that extended, and there's much talk in the SDR about extending that. But actually, beyond that, there's really questions around adaptive systems. There's questions around culture change. There's questions around transformation at speed and things like this. All those things are actually social science questions. So I think that I'd really like to see social science being brought into this much more so. And really that kind of element is not really understood very well in the SDR. The SDR really talks about products, much more less about process. And I think there's really an opportunity for higher education to plug into both of those things.
Your expertise is in digital transformation and defense and military communications. In the past 25 years has seen a major switch around from in the Cold War, where the defense industry was driven by military research paid for by governments. Now we have the private sector, the digital sector, which is almost all in the private sector, is driving military technology.
Right.
How is that trend going to continue? Is it going to accelerate? How does the British Ministry of Defence ride that wave of technology?
That's a really great question. You're absolutely right. There's been a fundamental transition in that, especially in terms of government R&D spending in defense, where it was somewhere up near almost 20% at the end of the Cold War, and now we're something about 4.9%. And so there has been this fundamental change in terms of where these things come from, and they come from largely commercial space rather than, say, government space, whether that's ministers or whether that's universities. You're absolutely right that there needs to be a way in which to kind of bridge that gap, if you will, between government or between defense and where those things are being made. And that's where my research is particularly interested in. How do you build that relationship? Because I think that on one hand, relying on the defense industry in the UK in order to do that, actually, I think a very special relationship can be built. And we already do have special relationships, say, from the defense primes, for instance. And I think that really going beyond that in terms of being able to support SMEs in order to continue their contribution to defense innovation is really key. I think the bigger challenge actually is many of the drivers, both financially and scientifically, of digital innovation is in Silicon Valley, and really it's this American investment that is really driving that. Now, on one hand, the United States continues to be a strong ally of the United Kingdom, and long may that last. But the biggest challenge for us is that that's also not politically neutral. As we see in the case of something like Starlink, for instance, that can be turned on and that can be turned off. And we don't want to be in a position to where UK defense is in jeopardy because someone is deciding not to intervene or going to turn it off, really. And I think that's the biggest challenge, which is actually not a science challenge. It's a people challenge. Yeah.
Well, the obvious question is, what's the next big thing going to be in tech for defense?
Yeah, very good question. The next big thing that's going to be in tech is really going beyond essentially this current stage of AI. we know that large language models are going to be fundamentally important for all kinds of reasons. But actually, what we know is that as soon as you're in combat, you don't need false answers. Right, you've got to be able to work with systems that are going to give you the right kind of feedback that actually represent your surroundings, and we know that actually that these things that that are being produced by digital companies may be useful in other parts, not on the front line, but actually as soon as you put them into combat, that it's a much messier place, and you need this, every time you pull the trigger, you need that to happen. So I think there's going to be innovations in AI, whether that's semantic AI or something else that actually is not using such large data sets, that's much more able for soldiers to carry around with them. That kind of portability, low energy use, and also low data use is something that I think that AI is going to have to move into in order for it to be fundamentally useful in combat.
Professor Galbraith, thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much.